Discover the incredible power of patience. Transform your life with these 7 unexpected lessons. Jake stood at the threshold of the garage, the morning sun spilling over the horizon like spilled oil on concrete. The scent of grease hung heavily in the air, blending with the chill of autumn that reminded him of everything he had yet to achieve. At 27, he felt like a ghost in his own life, haunting a small Midwestern town that expected too much and gave too little. Every morning, he pulled on his worn boots, gritting his teeth against the weight of heavy expectations pressing down like a storm cloud. With a single mother and a younger sister depending on him to keep the lights on, Jake juggled work shifts as a mechanic and diner server, trying to keep their world from crumbling. But each day felt like an uphill battle, and with each turn of the wrench, he felt more like a failure. Just a few more hours, he'd tell himself, hands calloused and weary through repairing rusted engines and greasy machinery. But the relentless grind led only to exhaustion, not recognition. Jake craved a simple acknowledgement. Just a nod, a pat on the back from those who didn't see him at all. Patience? It felt like a cruel joke in a world that thrived on instant gratification. Before he could question the meaning of it all, a sudden health scare struck him down like a thief in the night, leaving him bedridden and battered. The fear of losing everything, of being unable to provide, scorched him as he reluctantly turned to Mr. Thompson, the town's wise elder with silver hair and timeless stories. Sitting beneath the old oak tree, the 2 men spoke. Patience, Jake, he'd say, eyes twinkling S&T about waiting. It's how you act while you wait. But to Jake, that advice felt maddening. Each hour spent listening felt like another problem piling onto his chest as his life swirled out of control. As the days passed, patience morphed from an abstract concept into a burden that tethered him, clashing with his urge for immediate recognition. He felt the pressure deepen with every word Mr. Thompson shared, each story steeped in a wisdom that danced out of reach. Fear coiled within him. What if he grew old and lost sight of everything he ever wanted while learning that elusive lesson? Waiting felt like a betrayal of himself, of his family. The anger roared in his gut like an engine sputtering to life. Then came the moment that broke him. Jake overheard a couple of coworkers whispering disdainfully as he wiped grease from his hands. Their words cut deeper than any tool he wielded. Yes, just another failure, one jutted out, stuck where he belongs. The sting was like a punch to the gut, igniting a fierce fire that he hadn't tapped into before. Determination surged through him, igniting a battle within against the murky shadows of self-doubt. What would he fight for? Recognition? To prove the naysayers wrong? Jake clenched his jaw, knowing that suppressing this pain would only lead to bitterness. The world had labeled him, maybe it was time he took the reins back. As he prepared for work, his mind raced with a clamoring noise, drowning out any semblance of peace. A face-off loomed on the horizon, a confrontation that could test not just his patience but his very identity. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Each hour ticked by, winding him up tighter and tighter in the grips of fear and determination. With each thrust of his wrench, Jake grappled with the choice ahead of him. Would he remain silent, bound to the shadows? Or would he step into the light, voice his truth, and confront those who doubted him? The bitterness lingered thick in the air with every echo of their harsh words. The unsettling silence that followed felt heavier, suspended in time, leaving Jake with only one undeniable truth: he was standing at the precipice of a decision that could alter everything, leaving him trapped in the question. Who would he choose to become? The morning rush swelled around Jake like a rising tide, the clang of pots and the hum of chatter filling the diner as he slipped behind the counter. His heart thudded in his chest, fueled not just by the caffeine that surged through his veins but by a fierce determination pulsing beneath the surface. Each smile he forced onto his face felt increasingly like a mask, But today he refused to let the whispers drown him out. Today was the day he would speak up. The rhythm of the diner felt both familiar and foreign. As he served coffee and pie, snippets of conversation buzzed around him. He forced himself to listen, each comment morphing into a challenge. Flashes of his coworkers' disdain flickered in his mind, and coupling their words with fresh resolve ignited something within him. He was tired of letting their judgment define him, tired of feeling inadequate in a role that should empower him instead of restraining him. He looked up from the register as Randall, a longtime coworker and part-time antagonist, swaggered in, exuding an air of arrogance that infuriated Jake. Randall was just the kind of person who thrived on belittling others to lift himself up. Hard at work as usual, Jake? He sneered, his voice dripping with condescension. Something snapped. No longer willing to be the punchline in Randall's routine, Jake's hands clenched against the edge of the counter. He could sense the gaze of his customers. Their attention flitted from the food on their plates to the impending confrontation. "That's right," Jake replied, his voice steady though his insides twisted with unease. "But you wouldn't know the struggle, would you?" The words tumbled out before he could stop them, surprising both Randall and himself. A ripple of silence washed over the diner, hearts collectively halting at what was likely his first attempt at standing his ground. Randall blinked, taken aback, but pride reclaimed his expression quickly. "Better keep your head down, Jake. You wouldn't want to get in over your head," he retorted, but now there was an edge of uncertainty in his tone. Underneath, Jake could sense the shift, could feel the air thickening with a tension that felt both liberating and terrifying. With his heart racing, Jake continued, drawing strength from a new well of self-worth. "You think you can just walk in here and belittle me without consequence? I'm not going to sit and take it any longer. I have ambitions, dreams beyond these walls." The words struck like hammers against metal, their impact reverberating through the room. The diners paused, forks suspended mid-air as they digested the confrontation. Jake's heart thudded like a drum in the ensuing silence, the world around him stilling. In that moment he realized he had crossed a threshold. All those nights spent doubting himself came rushing to the forefront, but with them came a flicker of hope, a glimpse of who he could become. Randall's demeanor shifted, the laughter stripped from his voice. "You're just wasting your breath. This is your life now." But underneath that bravado, Jake saw his own insecurities reflected. It was a facade, a mask he could never wear. For the first time, he recognized the thin veneer of success amassed by others often masked a deeper fear of change. Jake reflected on the wisdom Mr. Thompson had imparted, weaving patience with action, the potential for growth almost tangible. Today was just the beginning. As Randall left, muttering under his breath, Jake felt like a weight had lifted. The energy in the diner buzzed once more. Conversations flowed like a river unblocked. But amidst the normalcy, a fire still burned inside him, a determination to carve out a new path. With each new shift, he vowed to embrace who he was, to confront those who underestimated him, and to transform himself from silent spectator to audacious participant. Yet, as Jake served the next round of donuts to a table of elderly patrons, his mind raced ahead. Facing embarrassment had uplifted him, but a conflict lurked behind his newfound courage. Questions flushed through his mind. How far would he really go to assert himself? Would he face more than just words from Randall? The answer felt like a heavy weight, preparing to push him into uncharted territories where he could either sink or swim. The path ahead shimmered with uncertainty, but sparkled with potential. It was time to prove, not just to Randall but to himself, that he was more than just a ghost in his own life. Who would rise next, the defeated mechanic or the determined dreamer? The following shifts at the diner were different. Jake's confidence surged like the morning sun spilling through the front windows, illuminating every corner of the establishment. He engaged customers as if they were old friends, his smile genuine, buoyed by the weight of the recent confrontation. Each cup of coffee he served felt infused with the promise of something more, something he hadn't dared to let himself believe could exist just days ago. Behind the counter, he kept the pace brisk, but his heart raced for reasons beyond the rhythm of his feet. The realization that he could alter his narrative began penetrating deep into his consciousness. A subtle balance emerged, one between vulnerability and strength, between dreams and tangible reality. Yet, doubt lingered like a shadow, always lurking on the periphery of his thoughts. At the end of a hectic Saturday shift, Jake found himself alone in the diner, wiping down tables and lost in contemplation. His thoughts spun around the idea of ambition as he surveyed the worn surroundings, the cracked linoleum, the flickering neon signs. None of it felt insurmountable anymore. He could reshape himself from this ordinary landscape. "Hey, Jake!" shouted Brenda from the back, pulling him from his reverie. She stepped out, her blue eyes bright, a plate of leftover pies precariously balanced in her hands. "You handled Randall like a pro today. What happened to the old you?" She asked the question, but Jake didn't have a rehearsed answer. The old him felt like a distant memory, drowned in a wave of newfound resolve. "I guess I finally figured I had a right to be here," he said slowly, the weight of the admission settling like a cozy blanket. In the past, he might have flinched from the truth. Today, he felt a spark of pride. Brenda's expression shifted. "You really should think about what's next. This place, it's just a stop on your way, right?" Her words wrapped around him like a thread woven into the fabric of his ambition. They were both trapped in the diner, but she was hinting at possibility, an exit out of this phase of his life, a step toward something greater. Jake nodded thoughtfully. "Yeah, I'm thinking of it that way. I'm not ready to stay a branch on the same old tree." Confidence can be brittle, Jake realized. Just as quickly as it sprouted, he could feel it wane, replaced by the gnawing fear of failure's potential return. A flicker of self-doubt ignited. Could he really break free? The diner grew quiet as night encroached, the soft clatter of plates replaced by the hushed sounds of the staff counting tips. Alone in his thoughts, he grasped for clarity. The next step was crucial, but how to solidify his direction? He needed a plan, a pathway through the tangled mess of emotions that both inspired him and tempered his resolve. What did he want beyond the diner? He reviewed the positions at the nearby auto repair garage he'd always dismissed. That skill turning wrenches, diagnosing engines had been drilled into him over years of practice, but more importantly, it excited him far more than the low buzz of the diner ever could. Yet, doubts curled in on themselves like the smoke from the kitchen. What if he failed? What if he realized he wasn't cut out for it after all? The dissonance between his aspirations and fears felt excruciatingly real. Taking a deep breath, he leaned against the counter, the cool metal grounding him as he pondered. Action was the antidote to uncertainty, wasn't it? Maybe all he needed was a single decisive step to confront those lurking fears head-on. In that moment, Jake made a commitment not just to explore the opportunities beyond the diner but to begin mapping it out actively. It was time to tackle the unknown, to confront Randall, and to assert not only a voice but also a vision for his future. As he worked through the plan, he felt the world shift around him. A phone call, a visit, any action he could take to initiate change was no longer daunting but invigorating. But as morning loomed on the horizon, a deep question simmered. Beneath his resolve, was he truly ready to confront not just the dismissive voices around him but also, more profoundly, the critical voice within? The path lay before him, twinkling with promise but shadowed by the unknown. Would he seize this opportunity, or would fear claw him back into doubt? The clock ticked on, backlit by the streetlights, maintaining its relentless march forward. The sunlight creeping through the diner's windows brought warmth but also urgency. As Jake stood by the counter, he felt a tinge of responsibility weighing on his shoulders. The conversation with Brenda echoed in his mind, her words sculpting a larger vision of what his future could hold. He envisioned himself not just as a waiter but as someone capable of more: a mechanic, a craftsman, a creator. The next shift arrived sooner than he expected. As he slipped into his apron, the familiar smells enveloped him. But there was a distinctly different air. He was no longer just serving coffee. He was building connections. It was a reversal of mentality that allowed him to face the shift with a new purpose. However, that purpose was still tempered with hesitation. As the regulars filtered in, he found himself rehearsing thoughts about his future. Each interaction felt charged with potential, yet doubts flickered violently in the corners of his mind. Would he really step into that auto shop to pursue a role he once thought unworthy of his efforts? What if, after all this yearning and planning, he was simply chasing shadows? Midway through the shift, a familiar face approached the counter. Stan, the old mechanic from the garage. Stan had always treated Jake with respect, his rough exterior belying a gentle nature. As they chatted, Jake cautiously mentioned his ideas about transferring to the garage. "You know, Jake," Stan said, scratching his beard, "maybe you should come by this week after your shift. Let us take a look at some engines and see if it feels right for you. Words and dreams are fine, but if you want to do this, you've got to roll up your sleeves and dive in." The straightforwardness of Stan's invitation resonated deep within Jake. This was the external validation he needed, someone experienced acknowledging his aspirations as legitimate. But as excitement surged through him, so did a fresh wave of self-doubt. What if he showed up and couldn't keep up? What if he faltered? "Sure, I'll think about it," Jake replied, masking his uncertainty with a practiced smile. Yet, inside, the confrontation beckoned powerfully. That evening, after the last customer faded into the night, Jake found his mind racing with thoughts. Stan's offer lingered vividly in his consciousness, sparking a swirl of possibilities. He envisioned himself in the garage. Grease-stained palms, the smell of gasoline, an entirely different rhythm to life. He pulled out his phone, fingers hovering over the screen as he wrestled with the tension in his chest. Forcing himself to act on the impulse, he sent a quick message to Stan. "I'm in. Let us set a time." A brief pause followed as his stomach flipped. It was done. He made a choice. However, the freedom of choice was juxtaposed with a suffocating fear of failure that wrapped around his chest tightly. As he scrubbed the counter, his gaze drifted to the reflection in the window. There he stood, a man in his mid-20s caught at a crossroads, so close to the edge of something potentially transformative, yet swaddled by fears that challenged his resolve. Yet, perhaps this was the crux of personal growth. The journey was seldom linear. Every misstep, every agonizing second of hesitation could ultimately be fodder for development and understanding. If he was to truly reshape his future, he needed to confront both his aspirations and fears with clarity and intention. What mechanisms would he employ to confront his own limitations, to manifest the realities of his dreams? The question circled in his mind like the diner's overworked ceiling fan, a constant reminder of the churn of self-doubt and resilience defined by choice. As he exited the building that night, a renewed purpose fluttered in his heart. He had made a decision, but the real test awaited. Could he embrace the challenges of the garage and dismantle the barricades of his insecurities? Jake took a deep breath, his resolve crystallizing before the darkening sky. He stepped forward, primed for what lay ahead. Would the reality of the auto shop fuel his passion or deepen his uncertainties? The real confrontation was just on the horizon, and he was finally ready to face it head-on. Jake arrived at the garage early, the dawn light filtering through the tall windows like a promise. He had hardly slept, the adrenaline of his decision thrumming in his veins. Each breath felt heavy with expectation. Today was not merely about mechanics. It was about self-discovery, unearthing the latent desires buried beneath years of serving coffee. Stan greeted him with a nod, his gruff demeanor radiating an inviting warmth. "You made it. Good to see you, kid." The sound of tools clinking and engines revving in the background buzzed like a sense of purpose, and Jake couldn't help but feel the weight begin to lift, replaced by an eagerness that bolstered his confidence. "Ready to get your hands dirty?" Stan asked, wiping grease from an old rag onto his coveralls. This was the moment Jake had been waiting for, a tangible step into his aspirations. He nodded, a small grin breaking free of his cautious exterior. They stood before an engine mounted on a workbench, the metal gleaming under the fluorescent lights. "Start by taking a look at this one," Stan instructed, gesturing toward the open hood. Pieces of machinery lay exposed like layers of truth waiting to be revealed. Jake stepped closer, the aroma of motor oil and gasoline enveloping him. He felt every nerve in his body crackle with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "So, what do I do?" he asked, his voice laced with nervousness. He didn't want to appear incompetent, but he also knew feigning expertise wouldn't serve him. "First, we observe," Stan said, running his fingers over the engine's components. "Get a feel for its rhythm and where things fit together. You need to understand the language of the machine before you can fix it." As Jake meticulously studied the engine, he realized he was no longer just a waiter playing at mechanics. His curiosity was unearthing a connection he had long craved. Each part had its purpose, and as he took mental notes about the mechanic's inner workings, he found a sense of clarity that transcended the noise of his doubts. For the next few hours, they worked in tandem, Stan guiding while Jake fumbled elegantly through the intricacies of tools, bolts, and gears. Tension crept back in once or twice, especially when he miscalculated a wrench size or dropped a screw. "Damn it," he muttered under his breath. "Maybe I'm not cut out for this." Stan heard him, squinting through the grease streaking his forehead. "What you need, Jake, is patience. Messing up isn't the end. It's part of the process. Every error reminds us how to succeed next time." Jake felt every word land like a hammer striking an anvil, forging a deeper understanding within him. The self-reproach that plagued every misstep began to transform into a lens of opportunity. Could he embrace failure as a tool rather than a chasm? By the end of the day, the engine was reassembled, various parts snugly in place. With Stan's help, Jake had also tackled his anxiety, crafting a feeble but tangible sense of competence. He felt the glimmer of hope nudging its way through the shadows of his self-doubt. "You did well today," Stan praised as they wiped down tools for the day. The praise felt earned and invigorating but still held a flicker of uncertainty. Did he truly belong here, or was this newfound confidence merely an illusion? The sun dipped lower in the sky as Jake took a moment to step back and absorb the noise of the garage, the laughter, the banter, the sounds of engines and tools. He realized he had embarked on a journey of reinvention, one where his choices mattered beyond the confines of the diner. As he left the garage, his thoughts spiraled into possibilities. Could he carve out a place for himself in this world? Was the stone of his doubts finally starting to chip away? He had briefly dipped his toes in what could be, yet the depths still awaited exploration. The questions loomed, more profound than the engines before him. Could he truly change the course of his life, or was he destined to wrestle with the shadows of uncertainty forever? The path erupted with unknowns, and it was clear this was only the beginning. Jake returned to the garage the next day, buoyed by the slight success of yesterday. His muscles ached pleasantly from the experience of working hard, a sure sign that he had tested himself beyond the routine of diner shifts. Yet, despite this flicker of enthusiasm, doubt gnawed away at his resolve. Could he continue to embrace this challenge, or was he just clinging to a fleeting high that would dissipate once the tasks grew more complicated? Stan was already deep in conversation with another mechanic when Jake arrived. The ambient sounds of clattering tools and muffled laughter felt both welcoming and overwhelming, a reminder of how far he had yet to go. He took a moment, inhaling the sharp scent of oil, allowing it to settle around him as a protective layer. This was his domain now, a place where growth was measured not by tips or orders filled, but by the knowledge gained and the skills honed. "Come here, I've got something for you," Stan called over, breaking through Jake's reverie. He held out a small box filled with assorted tools. "These will be yours to use as you see fit. Treat them well, and they'll treat you the same." Jake took the box, a thrill coursing through him. It was more than just tools. It was a sign of trust. Stan wasn't just allowing him to use equipment. He was giving him a stake in this world. However, the exhilaration was undercut with insecurity. Was he worthy of this trust? What if he fumbled with these instruments like he had previously? He pushed the nagging fears aside. Today was another opportunity to cultivate resilience. "What's on the docket today?" Jake asked, eager to dispel his growing unease. Stan motioned to a car on the far side of the garage. "That beauty needs an engine tune-up. I want you to lead on this one. I'll be nearby if you need me, but I want to see you take charge." A jolt of panic surged through Jake. He wanted to be confident and assertive, yet the prospect of tackling a real job was daunting. The pressure felt suffocating. He steadied his breath, recalling Stan's words from the previous day. Messing up isn't the end. As he approached the car, he felt like he was standing atop a precipice. He visualized the car's engine as a puzzle waiting to be solved, each component requiring attention and thought. With each step, doubt shrank slightly, replaced with a growing resolve to confront the complexities ahead. Jake knelt beside the vehicle, fingers brushing over the cool metal. He opened the hood and began inspecting the engine. The parts gleamed, and he felt the engine's heartbeat pulse beneath his palms. It sparked a connection that made his heart race not from fear, but from an eagerness to understand how this all fit together. He scrutinized every piece, recalling the knowledge gained from yesterday. Each adjustment was a delicate dance, one he navigated with tenacious care. He tightened bolts, adjusted the carburetor, and fine-tuned the various systems, every move solidifying a layer of confidence within him. Yet, as he immersed himself in the task, a miscalculation crept in. A screwdriver slipped, scratching the paint on the car. The sound of metal against metal echoed throughout the garage, a chilling reminder of imperfection. His heart sank, and a wave of shame washed over him. He could feel the eyes of his coworkers darting in his direction, judgment pulsing in the air. Stan approached, his demeanor calm. "What happened?" he asked, his voice steady, lacking the disappointment Jake had feared. "I messed it up," Jake admitted, feeling the sting of embarrassment wash over him. His breath quickened. "I thought I had it," but Stan interrupted, his eyes sharp. "Every mechanic has scars, kid. Each scratch, each mistake is a lesson. Own it. Fix it." Jake's initial tumult transformed into determination. He wanted to be more than just someone who made excuses. This was his moment to embrace the risk of vulnerability as part of the trade. He grabbed a buffer, silently vowing that this blemish wouldn't define him. The rest of the afternoon melded together in a rhythm of effort and resolve. He tackled the challenge head-on, even fixing his earlier mistake. It served as a reminder of patience both with himself and the process. As the day drew to a close, Jake felt a deep-seated fulfillment nestled in his chest. He now understood that mistakes were mere stepping stones towards mastery, not deterrence. He wasn't just a budding mechanic, he was starting to embody one. The weight of his past was still a presence. The shadows of self-doubt lingered at the edge of his psyche. But saying no to fear ignited a flicker of light that dared him to confront the unknown. Walking out of the garage, he understood this journey had only begun. Little did he know that the next challenge would unearth deeper, more unsettling truths about his past and his potential future. He was about to step into a world that demanded not just proficiency, but also conviction, a true test of his commitment to change. What awaited him in the shadows would ultimately shape his resolve for good or ill. This was not just about engines, it was about the very engine of his life. The next morning, Jake's anticipation buzzed through him like a live wire. He arrived at the garage early, soaking in the quiet hum of machinery and the fresh scent of oil mixed with the dawn air. He had embraced the uncertainty that accompanied his burgeoning skills. Eager to delve deeper into the mechanics of this new life, he was constructing piece by piece. Stan was already working on a rugged truck, his hands deftly navigating the complexities of its engine. The sight inspired Jake as he approached with his toolbox, ready for whatever tasks awaited him today. "Hey kid," Stan said without looking up. "I've got a special project for you today. Not just a tune-up, a full engine rebuild. It needs to be done right, and I trust you to take the lead." Jake's heart thudded in his chest. He had never attempted anything so intricate. The shadow of intimidation loomed over him, whispering doubts about his capability. Transforming an entire engine felt monumental compared to his previous tasks. A flood of anxiety threatened to wash over him, but he steadied himself. This was an opportunity for growth. "Sure, I can do it," Jake replied, the words tasting foreign but resolute. He set to work, methodically dismantling the engine block. Each piece he removed revealed new layers of complexity, challenging every bit of knowledge he had accumulated. As he laid out each component, visualizing the rebirth of the engine in his mind, he discovered much more than mechanical intricacies. His mind flooded with memories of past failures, the diner shifts where he felt like a mouse spinning in a wheel, never quite achieving enough. Those voices echoed in the back of his head, reminding him of limits he had once accepted as fact. Determined to silence those echoes, he focused intently on the task. He studied the engine parts, referencing manuals and consulting Stan frequently. Each step powered his confidence, while fragments of self-doubt began to shed away like rust. But just as he thought he was gaining ground, disaster struck. In an attempt to fit a crucial component, he accidentally misaligned it. The abrupt grind of metal against metal sent his stomach plummeting. For a moment, time stalled as shame, anger, and frustration collided within him. He could already feel the judgment of his peers, saw it reflected in the glances of colleagues who were noticing his blunder. Then he heard Stan's voice from across the garage, cutting through the chaos. "Jake, don't let it eat you alive. What's the worst that can happen? Own your mistakes. They're part of the process." Those words unlatched something deep inside him. He hadn't just fumbled. He had a choice ahead of him. He could either let this moment extinguish the flame he had kindled or stoke it further. What if I actually fix it? He thought. That possibility ignited a strange blend of fear and motivation. He retraced his steps methodically, analyzing where he had gone wrong. By confronting the error instead of cowering from it, Jake transformed a moment of failure into a valuable lesson in problem-solving. With each adjustment, he felt like an artist honing his craft. The moment was apposite. The mistakes did not define his journey. They informed it, sculpted it into something more robust. Finally, after long hours fueled by focus and grit, Jake reassembled the engine with newfound precision. When he turned the ignition, the purr of the engine felt euphoric, an embodiment of resilience. As he wiped away sweat, he took in the appreciative nods of his co-workers. There was no louder applause than the silence ringing within him, a validation that he had surmounted another obstacle on this road to self-discovery. But amidst the triumph, a flicker of unease remained in the back of his mind. He realized that as he matured into this new role, there were still facets of his life untouched, aspects of himself that craved exploration. What stories from his past were yet to be unearthed? Jake turned to Stan, about to ask for more insight when a sudden crash echoed from the back of the garage. The loud bang fractured his moment of clarity, redirecting his thoughts toward the uncertain shadows. A new challenge had emerged, one that would compel him to confront more than just mechanical mastery. What lay beyond that noise would press him to reckon with parts of himself he hadn't yet acknowledged, parts laden with unresolved fears and ambitions long hidden. Jake's attention snapped toward the source of the crash, his heart racing anew. The noise reverberated through the garage, an unwelcome disruption that drew his co-workers' eyes toward the back. Curiosity swirled inside him, stirring something deeper, a mix of apprehension and excitement. "Hey, Stan," Jake called, attempting to mask his unease. "What was that?" Stan wiped his hands on a rag, gaze fixed on the shadows beyond the rows of vehicles. "Just some tools falling, I think. But better check it out." With no time to collect his thoughts, Jake clutched his toolbox tightly, determination replacing the trepidation that sought to unearth old fears. As he navigated through the clutter, he could feel the weight of the moment pressing on him. What awaited him in that dimly lit area could be revealing, not just about his surroundings but about himself too. When he finally reached the back of the garage, he found a mess of tools strewn across the floor. In the center of it sat a young mechanic, no more than 20, visibly shaken as he scrambled to collect the chaos around him. A wave of recognition hit Jake. He had seen this rookie on shifts, someone trying to find his footing, just like he once had. "Hey, are you all right?" Jake asked, crouching beside him. "Yeah, just a bit clumsy," the young man replied, zipping up his bag, embarrassment coloring his cheeks. "I'm trying to keep up, but it's harder than I thought. I keep messing things up." Jake felt a knot in his chest tighten as he remembered his earlier struggles, the way self-doubt had once paralyzed him. "I get that," he said softly. "Takes time. We all start somewhere." "Really?" The young man looked up, surprise etched on his face. "I thought you were like a pro now." Jake chuckled, shaking his head. "Trust me, There were days I felt like everything was slipping through my fingers. As he spoke, he could sense a transformation bubbling within him, a stark realization that wouldn't he have emerged without confronting failures and challenges. Listen, every mistake feels like a setback, but that's where we grow. Own it, learn it, then move on. The mechanic nodded slowly, visibly absorbing the sentiment. I guess it's just hard to see it that way when it's happening. Yeah, it is. But it gets easier, Jake pressed. And you'll find that patience with yourself can reveal unexpected strengths. Ones you didn't even know existed. You'll see what you're capable of once you stop doubting yourself. In that moment, Jake recognized the impact of his own journey. Teaching someone else, sharing knowledge born from struggle, it illuminated a new facet of his character. He was no longer just a student in the world of mechanics. He was evolving into a mentor, a role that empowered him as much as mastering engines did. Days bled into weeks, each presenting Jake with new projects, new challenges, and new opportunities to counsel the younger mechanics. Every success bred confidence, but with it came a lingering pressure to maintain this newfound authority. One day, as he worked tirelessly on a vintage car that needed meticulous restoration, Jake heard whispers of change in the air. Rumors circulated around the garage about a potential partnership with a high-end restoration firm. This could elevate their small establishment into a recognized workshop, and with that, increased expectations. The prospect excited him but triggered an anxiety he hadn't felt in a while. Could he truly rise to the occasion? Would he prove worthy of the trust Stan had invested in him? As the weight of those questions bore down, Jake found himself pacing, adrenaline coursing through him like fuel. In that moment of hesitation, the echoes of self-doubt returned, ushering a discomfort so familiar. Yet amidst the turmoil, he could hear Stan's voice, wise and steady, reminding him to own his journey. Just as Jake settled on a resolve, a frantic yell erupted from the garage floor. "Help! We need a hand over here." His stomach twisted as he glanced toward the commotion. This was it, the moment to step forward and define who he had become within this chaotic world of grease and pistons. Did he possess the courage to confront the unfolding drama? As he rushed toward the calling voices, he felt the weight of discovery pressing upon him. He could feel the challenge ahead demanding everything he had learned, and the only way out of his mental maze was to plunge into the experience headfirst. What awaited him as he joined the fray would test not only his mechanical abilities but his very core, revealing deeper truths about his own resilience. Jake's heart raced as he sprinted towards the chaos, his instincts kicking in. The scene that awaited him was a harrowing one. A stack of tires had toppled over, pinning his coworker, Mike, beneath them. The frantic shouts of the other mechanics filled the air like an unending siren, filling Jake with urgency. "Jake, we need you," a voice yelled, grounding him amid the chaos. He felt an electric pulse of determination, a stark contrast to the self-doubt that had plagued his thoughts moments earlier. He rushed to the pile of tires, adrenaline pumping through his veins. Without thinking, he dropped to his knees beside Mike, who was pinned but conscious, his face pale and strained. "Don't worry, we'll get you out," Jake said, trying to sound calm even as his heart hammered in his chest. He felt an overwhelming weight, not just of the tires but of the responsibility that had been placed on him, a blend of skill and newfound leadership. As he and another mechanic hefted the first tire, Jake's mind raced like the engines he worked on daily. This was a crucial moment to show that he had evolved from being just a worker to a leader. Commanding attention, he rallied the other mechanics. On three. 1, 2, 3. Their collective efforts freed Mike, who gasped as he was pulled from beneath the weight. Relief washed over Jake, accompanied by a surge of pride. He had acted quickly, decisively. The memory of the young mechanic he had reassured only weeks before lingered in the back of his mind. "You okay, Mike?" Jake knelt beside him, concern etched across his brow. "Yeah, just shook up," Mike panted, looking up at Jake with a mix of gratitude and awe. As the adrenaline subsided, the reality of the moment set in. Jake had stepped up when it mattered, substantiating his role as a mentor not just in guiding others but in being present when things turned chaotic. However, the victory felt bittersweet. Doubt crept back in. Had he acted out of instinct, or had he truly evolved into this new version of himself? The incident rippled through the garage, igniting a discussion about safety protocols. Jake's perspective shifted from reacting to a crisis toward a broader focus on improvement. A brainstorming session ensued, ideas flying as he and his coworkers debated how to ensure that accidents like the one they had just witnessed could be avoided in the future. Jake shared his thoughts on standardizing the way equipment was stored, including safer organization techniques to prevent similar accidents. The dialogue buzzed with energy, and he felt a rush of empowerment. He wasn't just contributing, he was taking ownership of the workspace. But then an uncomfortable feeling surfaced again. What if his ideas didn't resonate? What if they lacked the impact he envisioned? A gnawing fear tugged at his mind, pushing against the buoy of confidence he had just found. Great points, Jake, Stan interjected, his voice steady. This is exactly the kind of initiative we need as a team. You've got a knack for this. Jake's heart soared at Stan's words. Yet in the back of his mind, a shadow of self-doubt lingered. Was this recognition fleeting? What would happen when the pressure of leadership intensified? The partnership they spoke of could bring new expectations, and with it, the unshakable fear of failing those who relied on him. Before he could spiral further, Stan motioned for Jake to join him in his office. I want to chat about that partnership, Stan said, his tone serious. Jake's pulse quickened. This conversation could change everything for him, a true defining moment. One that required him to confront his fears directly. The journey toward growth had been replete with challenges, but it seemed the time had come for real accountability and responsibility. As he stepped into the office, Jake wondered if he could truly embrace this role, if he had the courage to not just accept authority but to own it. The door closed behind him, sealing off the chaos, and as the weight of the moment pressed down, he realized that every challenge he faced only marked the beginning of another. The time had come to embrace his evolution, but at what cost? That uncertainty only deepened the tension as Stan placed a folder on the desk, and Jake's stomach churned with apprehension. What would emerge from this meeting? Jake sat across from Stan, the folder lying ominously between them, a silent sentinel of the weighty conversation that loomed. The office felt like a crucible where pressure could morph into transformation. We've been discussing the possibility of the partnership, Stan began, his gaze steady. You've shown remarkable growth, Jake. You've not just learned mechanics, you've demonstrated leadership. I want you to be involved in these discussions moving forward. The words washed over Jake, igniting a firestorm of emotions. This was what he had hoped for, a chance to be more, to transcend the shadows of doubt carved out by his past. He felt ready, prepared to accept this challenge. I thank you, he stammered, the weight of Stan's confidence propelling him forward. But what if I'm not enough? What if I can't meet expectations? Stan leaned back, his demeanor measured. You've shown time and again that you possess the ability to embrace risk and learn from it. Look at the way you stepped up today with Mike. That's not just instinct. That's leadership in action. You have to trust in what you've become, Jake. Patience isn't about timidity. It's about belief in your own evolution. Jake took a breath, each word reverberating within him, casting aside the doubts that threatened to resurface. It was time to abandon the idea of inadequacy and accept the new identity he had forged. I will, he reaffirmed, a sense of resolve flowing through him. I'll take on this role. With that declaration, everything shifted. Jake no longer felt like the ghost of his previous self. He was stepping into a well-defined, ambitious avenue that stretched beyond the diner and the mechanics he once thought were all he could achieve. He envisioned himself restructuring the garage's workflow, implementing safety initiatives, and nurturing his younger colleagues' potential, the visions propelling him towards a fulfilling purpose that illuminated his path. Over the next few weeks, Jake immersed himself in the partnership's preparations. He collaborated with Stan and the other mechanics, suggesting new organizational systems that improved efficiency and reduced risks. The garage buzzed with newfound energy. They were cultivating a workspace where everyone felt valued. The camaraderie solidified within the team became an essential element of their upcoming transition. ATA staff meeting. Jake presented his ideas confidently, detailing how the advancements could elevate the shop and invite greater opportunities. The approval and encouragement he received from his co-workers flooded him with a sense of belonging a legitimate position, no longer merely an aimless mechanic. He had crossed a threshold, demonstrating deep, personal and team growth that resonated within the Garage's culture. The achievement was palpable. As they secured the partnership, Jake felt a surge of validation, comparable to the thrilling roar of an engine firing to life. For the first time, he understood the power of patience within action, a lesson he had once struggled to grasp. Standing at the Garage's entrance one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jake marveled at the transformation around him. The burgeoning business thrived, but more importantly, he thrived within it. No longer a mere worker, he had blossomed into a guiding force, his experience lending credence to the journey of those who walked alongside him. And as he glanced back at his colleagues, he felt profound confidence in the path he'd chosen. Jake was no longer haunted by failures or fueled merely by determination to prove others wrong. He had come to recognize that confronting challenges with courage and developing resilience was not just about accepting hardship. It was about crafting a life filled with purpose and shared victories. As the dust settled in the garage and shadows danced softly in the last rays of light, Jake understood that every facet of his past shaped the present, molding him into who he was today: a leader, a mechanic, and above all, a man who had finally embraced the potential within himself. Now it was time for those watching his journey to take action too. If you've gained insight from Jake's transformation, you need to subscribe now so you don't miss out on our next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like right now to support us and feed the algorithm, helping us reach more aspiring individuals. Comment below your reactions and theories about Jake's journey, and share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. Show you're a true fan of personal overcoming stories.